And we're back on BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. Now we have moved into the next race here in North Georgia, the 51st State Senate seat, and we have on the line currently the State Senator, Steve Gooch. Senator Gooch, how are you today?
Well, good morning. I'm doing well. I just left my doctor from my annual physical, so I'm doing well.
And he said, what'd he say? I mean, we want to know if you're good at telling.
Well, you do the first part of the physical is you do the blood work. Then you come back next week and you finish up the rest of it. So I'll have to get back to you on that. BKP.
Oh, okay, all right. So
we're feeling pretty good anyway.
All right. Well, I hear you. Well, we wish you well on your physical. You've been all around the district here in the state, in your district, the 51st district. What are some of the things that you're hearing from the voters in the district?
Well, it's kind of funny. For the 6 years that I've been in the state senate, I've experienced this several times. When you introduce yourself to somebody for the first time, you say, "I'm your Senator, Steve Gooch," and a lot of people say, "Well, it's great to meet you. How are things in Washington?" And I say, "Well, I'm not your U.S. Senator, I'm your state senator." And a lot of people say, "Well, what's the difference?" And I go to explain it to them. And first thing I tell them is, well, the biggest difference is about $170,000 a year. So that's the difference in the pay. But no, and I kid with them and joke with them. But it's been a good experience, Brian. Going out and into the 51st district, as you know, it's a big area. There's 8 counties that are impacted by the 51st district. So you're literally representing people in Metro Atlanta, because Forsyth County is, for the most part, Metro Atlanta today. It wasn't that way in the 70s, but it is today. So you're representing people all the way from the north end of the metropolitan Atlanta region all the way to the state line of Tennessee and North Carolina. So there's a lot of diversity in those 200,000 people. And so they all have different values and they have different ideas on what good government looks like. So, I tell everybody I represent the majority will of the district, and sometimes that's not easy to identify. So that's why it's important that we stay in touch with each other and we communicate back and forth through emails, phone calls, and live town hall meetings. Go to other areas. I go to civic club meetings all throughout the year. I don't just do it during election year. I do it every month, everywhere in the district. I'm somewhere. So I've stayed very busy and very visible throughout my 6 years I've been in the state senate.
Well, if reelected, if the voters choose to send you back, what are some of the things that maybe they brought up to you during your campaigning through your district that, hey, next year when you go back and we want this or we want that, or some of the things that are taking place in your district of the greatest concerns to the voters?
A lot of people have a lot of frustrations on what's happened to them recently. And so the most recent information they have in their minds are the vetoes of the governor and some of the issues dealing with the transgender stuff that you covered so well up in Fannin County a couple of weeks ago. That issue has gone viral all over our country and here in North Georgia as well. And so people are saying we're fed up with the federal government coming down into North Georgia and trying to tell us how to live our lives. They want the federal government out of their lives. They expect the state to stand up to them, and they want the state to help local schools restore their funding and try to get the kids a good education. And so those are some of the things that they talk about. They talk about protecting our First Amendment rights and our Second Amendment rights and protecting our borders in our country to stop illegal immigration. And all those things are things that I've worked on in the 6 years I've been in the Senate, and I'm proud to have a very conservative voting record on those items. So they're basically affirming some of the things that I'm already doing, but it's good to get that feedback to make sure that we're on track with what the voters want to see done in Atlanta. And there's a big difference between Georgia Senate and U.S. Senate. There's a lot of differences, and so it's important that people understand the difference between their U.S. senator and their state senator. And I think we've demonstrated our ability to pass good legislation. We've passed tax cuts in Georgia in the Georgia Senate. We've passed good anti-illegal immigration bills bills in the Georgia Senate. We passed good fiscal policy that creates jobs for the private sector. We protected our public schools. We protected our gun rights. We restored a lot of those gun rights that were taken away from the liberals when they were in control decades ago. So I think we're on the right track. There's still more to do. I think there's always going to be more to do, and we'll continue to work on that, and we'll continue to work with our constituents and listen to what they have to say and try to represent their interests in Atlanta.
Well, Senator, did you feel throughout the district as you traveled, and this is something I picked up as I traveled throughout the district following some of these campaigns, that a lot of people want some pushback on the federal government from the state level, and they want to see us get back to some stronger state rights? Did you get that feeling from several of the voters?
Absolutely, Brian. For 6 years, we've pushed back on federal issues. The federal government has grown too large and too fast, and even during Republican control, even during the good times when we were growing our economies and so forth, Republicans were in office, we let things get out of control up there. We being we the people, and we've got to put a stop to some of that. They've got to get back to their basic core responsibilities, and that's all spelled out in the Constitution. Protecting our borders is one of those, and having a good, strong military. Those are things that the federal government needs to worry about. They have no business, in my opinion, dictating to the states and to the local school boards on educational policies like they did last week. The Obama administration has shifted this country so far to the left in the last 8 years. It's going to take a long time to restore some of that, and we've got to make sure we protect that by putting conservatives back in office. We've got to put conservatives on the bench at the Supreme Court. And the only way you're going to do that is to elect a conservative to the presidency in January. And this November is important that we get the people out to vote for Donald Trump. He's going to be the nominee. We've got to get in behind him and support him, and we've got to push him to the front in that election. And we've got to get our country back on track. And then all that'll it'll bleed down. It'll fall down into the states and to the local governments, and I think we'll get our country back on track again.
Well, what are some of the, I'm going to say like accomplishments or some of the things the citizens of the state, particularly your district, you could reassure them that that is good government, that you're going down there and being their state senator and representing the values of your district?
Well, when I first ran and got elected, I went around the district to many of the different groups in the communities. For example, the Tea Parties of practically every county in my district. In fact, I went to every Tea Party in my district multiple times. Every time I was asked to come, I went and I spoke. I went to the GOP meetings. I went to the Chamber of Commerce meetings. I went to their annual banquets. I spoke at their monthly meetings. I've had town hall meetings all throughout the district where people would come and just listen and talk and ask questions. And that's the best way to get a feel for what the people want. But we've worked on their behalf based on what their needs were and what they've asked us to do. For example, zero-based budgeting was a big push. If you remember back 6 years ago when I first got elected, everybody wanted to get rid of the waste and abuse and fraud in government. So we felt like zero-based budgeting would help us do that. And so we implemented zero-based budgeting, and as a result of zero-based budgeting, we've been able to reduce the size of the state government by 20%. We had 70,000 employees in the state government when I took office in 2011. Today, we've reduced that number by 13,300 full-time employees. And so zero-based budgeting was part of that. We also cut through fruition. We've privatized some services. We've outsourced it, but we've eliminated a lot of duplicative services between agencies. And so we've consolidated some agencies in state government. So those are some of the things on the fiscal side that we've done. We've balanced our budget. We do have a AAA bond rating in Georgia. It's one of the few states in the country that have that. It's very important that we continue to maintain that. We've restored a lot of our cuts to education that were done prior to me being there. During the recession, the budgets were cut 25%. A lot of that money came from education on the K through 12 level. We've restored those cuts every year since I've been in the Senate. We gave teacher raises this year, which I think are well-deserved raises, first raise they've had in a while. And so we've put our fiscal policies back in place. We've created some good tax reform measures that's been able to eliminate taxes in the state of Georgia. And so now I'd like to go back and continue to work on that. I want to get rid of the income tax in Georgia. That's one of the taxes I think that puts us at a disadvantage when we're trying to compete for corporate jobs. And when they move to Georgia, they look at our tax policy, and we have good fiscal tax policy, but I think reducing that income tax would be the next step that I'd like to see us move in that direction. So I'm a very conservative person. I have a 93% conservative rating from Americans Conservative Union. I've been endorsed by NRA. I've been endorsed by the Georgia Right to Life and the Georgia Carry. So I feel like I've continued to represent and resemble the conservative values of my district, and that's important that your person that you elect does that. And I would be your voice for the next 2 years, and I'll continue that message into Atlanta.
Let me ask you, if the voters, if the voters decide tomorrow to send you back to Atlanta, Senator, is it a little different? No matter who gets elected, is it a little different going back? And you've been serving with a Republican governor for several years, but this time Republicans are going back to serve with a Republican governor that they have to take up some bills that their district wants them to take right back up. Campus safety bill, religious liberty bill, and I call it the firefighter bill. But some of those bills going back, knowing the governor's already vetoed them once, is the challenge a little greater this next time for whoever goes to Atlanta?
Well, I respect the Constitution. I took an oath of office to follow it, and I'll continue to do that. Now, the three branches of government are very clear, and their responsibilities and their authority are spelled out clearly in black and white in that Constitution. The governor has veto power. He has that authority given to him or her in the Constitution. But the legislature also has authority to override vetoes. We have authority to reintroduce bills, and I promise you that the state Senate, as long as I'm involved, as long as I represent the 51st District, we will continue to push pro-gun and pro-life and pro-business legislation. And we will protect people's First Amendment and Second Amendment rights. And so I would sit here today, and I will tell you, I'll give you my promise that the two most important pieces of legislation that will be pre-filed between now and January will be similar language, if not identical, to what we've already passed in the RFRA, Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and the gun bill that you saw this year. Now, that's not to say that we won't sit down with the governor's office between now and then and try to work with him to try to come up with a compromise bill that still protects people's First and Second Amendment rights without jeopardizing our principles and without giving up our constitutional rights. I'm not sure what his major issues were with those two pieces of legislation. I have not talked to him personally about that, but between now and January, I expect the leadership in the House and the Senate to sit down with the governor and to work through all these differences. And on day one, we need to push those two bills just as fast as we can, get them through the House, get them through the Senate, lay them on the governor's desk, and ask him to sign them immediately, and then we can continue on with the rest of the people's business.
Well, Senator Gooch, I will have to say it's a little difficult to talk about the Second Amendment. It's a little difficult talking about traveling around and visiting Tea parties, because I did see you at the last Tea Party meeting, I think was at Fannin County, and I don't know if you're aware, our good friend John Mullinex died last night.
I did not. You just took my breath away.
Yes, yes. And Second Amendment, did you, I mean, I know you did, but was it hard to travel the district and find somebody that championed the Second Amendment like John Mullinex? He was.
No, sir. He is a champion. There's no doubt about it.
He was in the Piedmont Hospital last night and had a heart attack. And if somebody asked me what caused John's heart attack, I would say, and I think everybody that knows him out there will get a little chuckle in this, I would say what caused it was somebody came in and tried to take his gun. So I know him. I love him, man. It's a tough day. It's a tough day, and the hours of conversation I've had with my dear friend. Well, Senator, take a brief minute here before we wrap up. We're out of time. Is there anything you would like to say in closing to the 51st District.
Well, Brian, what I would like to say is that it's been an honor and a privilege to represent the people of the 51st District, North Georgia. I've lived here my whole life. I plan to die here. I hope that's not today, but if it is, I'm ready. But I want to continue to work hard for the people in North Georgia. I want to represent their conservative values in Atlanta. I'll continue to do that as long as they wish for me to be there. Tomorrow's the day to make that decision. There's 2 good candidates on the ballot. You can make your choice if you haven't already. But you know my record is clear. I'm a conservative. I've passed good pro-gun, pro-life, and pro-business legislation. We've cut taxes several times in the state Senate. We've made tough decisions. Not all those decisions are going to be agreed on by everybody in the 200,000-person region. I grant you that there's people that disagree with things that I've done, but I'll continue to listen. I'll continue to take input, and I'll continue to be at those meetings. When I'm invited, I'll come no matter where it is in the district. And I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to working with the constituents that are listening today. And, tomorrow's a big day, but we'll continue to work till the end of the year, regardless of the outcome tomorrow. And then if I'm reelected after tomorrow, then I'll continue to work for the next 2 years just as hard as I have for the last 6. And I appreciate you having me on here this morning.
Thank you, State Senator, 51st District, Steve Gooch. Thank you very much. And as we tell everybody, thank you for your willingness to serve, and we wish you well tomorrow. Have a nice day, Senator. We've been on with State Senator Steve Gooch from the 51st District, and he is being opposed by John Williamson. We're going to take a brief break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to be talking with candidate for the 51st District, John Williamson. We'll be back right after these brief messages. Lonnie, take us to break.
I'm Sheriff Dane Kirby, and I'll stand up for you.
I'm Stacy Nicholson, Sheriff of Gilmer County, and I will stand up for you.
Stand up and speak out. No matter how rich, cool, talented you believe yourself to be, how you treat people ultimately tells all. I am Allison Sosby, District Attorney, and I'll stand up for you.
Truck Month is back at your new Days Chevrolet in Jasper with savings up to $8,000 off MSRP. Right now, get a roomy new Chevy Equinox for just $23,200, or get Days max discount on a new Silverado Crew Cab, just $31,900, plus instant easy credit with Days Fast Track Credit Center. But these Truck Month savings won't last long. Get to Days Chevrolet in Jasper, where Chevy cars and trucks cost less.
Better days ahead, Days Chevrolet.
Find new roads.
Switch and save at Schottenkirk Ford. Find quality pre-owned trucks under $20,000, and not just Fords. We have all the best makes and models. Shop the best selection of certified pre-owned Fords in the area. Switch today and shop our network of over 500 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. We'll even deliver it to you. Plus, every vehicle sold comes with Schottenkirk Customer Care, which offers you extra protection for no extra charge. Make the switch to Schottenkirk Ford in Jasper. Online at SchottenkirkFordJasper.com.
North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds. Come on in to view the area's largest selection of fine jewelry at North Georgia Diamond. All repairs and designs are done on site by our jewelers. And North Georgia Diamond has the lowest prices on loose diamonds. You can also sell your gold, silver, and coins at North Georgia Diamond between Walmart and Lowe's in East LJ. Locally owned by Bill and Allison Craig, North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds in North Georgia.
Okay, we're back on BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. And we continue our candidate day here on FetchYourNews.com, trying to bring you all the information and give all the candidates an opportunity to ask for your vote. We are currently talking with candidates from the 51st District State Senate candidates, and we're now joined on the line by Mr. John Williamson. Mr. Williamson, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Brian. Just fine. Thanks for having me on your show.
We have it is one day left here of campaigning. What have you? I have seen in social media. You have been all over the district, and as you've traveled the district and the people you're meeting, what are some of the concerns you've heard from them, or some of the takeaway from voters that you've met throughout the district?
Well, the following are some of the issues that have resonated with our citizens as I've traveled about, as you say. The first one is the fact that my campaign is essentially self-funded, which they see as decoupling my future votes from the establishment and the Atlanta lobbyists. So that is number one. Second is they recognize that there have been tax increases that have affected them, whether or not you say there has not been, and whether it's registering a car for a private sale or that they have one that they brought in from out of state. And also they notice that they are facing higher property taxes to account for the local taxes that have been transferred to Atlanta. And there is a suspicion, right or not, that their taxes are helping to build the roadways to the Braves Stadium. So there's a little suspicion about where their money is going in Atlanta. And third, they're looking for leadership that just won't say, I tried, but will actually fight for their interest in the legislature or the media or other public forums. I hear the word backbone a lot. They'd like their leaders to have backbone. And then finally, they agree that we are on what I call the insanity program, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And that's why there's such an anti-incumbent mood in this country, that we've been doing the same thing over and over and we're getting no different results. And finally, the issue of transparency. We can talk about this in greater detail, but they like transparency with regard to the bills that are under considerations, the impact that these bills will have on us, and how our legislators voted and why. So those are five of the issues that seem to resonate with the people that I talk with as we cross this district, Brian.
Well, let me ask you something. Those are the things that have resonated as you cross the district and talk to different voters. Are these the things that resonated with you in making your decision? Are you validated when you talk to some of these people? Are you validated in some of the reasons that you made the decision to run as you're talking to the voters?
Well, Brian, I'd like to answer that by just reviewing what I look back and what I wrote initially on my website is the reasons that I started this campaign. And I said at that time, and I'll repeat it again, that I have been dissatisfied with the paths that our legislative leaders have taken in Atlanta, especially with their increased taxation. And rather than sitting back and complaining, I decided to take action, to volunteer to be a part of the political process and to fight to move the ship of state back to common sense Republican values. I wanted to give the voters in the 51st District a choice, one that values transparency, a choice to break away from the entrenched power politics that intimidates us in North Georgia and responds only to the wishes of the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce and the corporations that seem to want to force their values on us. Now, this is as true today as it was when I wrote it, in my opinion, from traveling the district.
What about, were these things that are concerns that you shared with because at the current time, Steve Gooch is your senator, state senator. Are these concerns and issues that you had shared with the state senator Gooch before you made your decision to run? And when you say legislators across the state, so particularly you made a choice to run against him. So are these things you discussed with him beforehand, making your decision to run?
Yes, in the sense that, for instance, we have discussed with the senator this penalty on T-SPLOST. A lot of voters may not realize that if you did not vote for the T-SPLOST Transportation Funding Act back in 2012, that when you received money back from the state for LMIG or local projects, that instead of having to provide 10% matching funds, you had to provide 30% matching funds. And so I discussed this with the senator, and he just denied. He denied that there was any such penalty. And to me, that wasn't transparency. If you can't admit that maybe you made a mistake and that maybe some of the things that have been done have not been to the advantage of your constituents, I think at least you could man up and say, no, you're right, John. You know, that is a penalty, but that was part of the legislation, and that's the way it is. And actually, the legislators in the Senate actually recognized that this was a problem for the citizens, and they actually tried to pass a bill to remove that penalty, that 30% penalty. And it turns out that even though 3/4 of the state voted against the T-Splosh, they couldn't get enough legislators together to vote to repeal that penalty. So that tells me that the legislators as a whole aren't really responding to what we have, the problems that we have, and the issues that we have.
In your travels, did you meet with any elected officials, commissioners, post commissioners, sheriff, whatever may say? And did you find anything from them, the elected officials in some of these counties, concerning the struggle that counties are up against when it comes to the state?
Yes, indeed. Well, when you go to the forums, and I remember just recently we went to the Lumpkin County forum, and there are 6 men that were competing for the chairmanship or post issues, and I was absolutely astonished after listening to some of the things said about Lumpkin County, about how well it was doing, that every one of them said that their biggest problem, the single biggest problem, was the tax digest, that they didn't have enough tax digest to raise taxes to keep going, and that they were in financial difficulty, and that they just desperately needed businesses to come in to expand their tax base. Now, how that translates into what the state can do is certainly an issue, but any time that they lose money to the state, for instance, by some of these minor charges that the Transportation Funding Act has brought upon them, such as losing around $35,000 in sales tax down to that they have to pay for their fuels now that they didn't used to in the county and school, and paying $100 per heavy vehicle for both school buses and county buses. That takes money out of the treasury of the county commissioners and the counties, and so they have to make that up, and they're struggling very desperately to find ways to do that. So that's pretty much what I see happening in the counties. And I'm very sensitive to the indebtedness and the difficulties that the counties are having to manage their funds in the face of all of these issues that are brought to them by the state.
Well, let me ask you, what would the first order of business for the state senator John Williamson, if elected, when you got to Atlanta? What do you think? What have you thought about would be your first order of business, or what are you taking away from the district that you think, for the citizens' sake, should be your first order of business if you were elected to go to Atlanta?
Well, of course, the first thing is to let the dust settle. There are a number of campaigns that are going on that for county offices that aren't resolved yet, probably won't be resolved until runoffs. But the first issue for me would be to start building the relationships with all of the county officials, county commissioners, Chamber of Commerce, and all of those folks, to continue a dialogue to understand what their issues are and what their concerns are. Now, as a state senator, there's not a lot that I can do to define what's best for their counties. I believe that that's in the hands of the county, both the county commissioners, the Chamber of Commerce, and the school board, as well as the citizens, to come together and determine what it is they would like to accomplish. And as a senator, I would do what I can to provide them access to the funds that they might need that would be available. So the first issue is certainly to build the relationships, and there will be new relationships because there are a number of incumbents that are not going to be back in office again. So that was the first goal. Now, were you asking about the first legislation that I would promote? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is you said first thing you would go to all the elected officials in the counties and see what their needs are before creating a exact list of things to take to Atlanta. But let's just say, like you said, the legislation, what is the first piece of legislation maybe that you've thought of that you would like to introduce or be a part of if you were sent to Atlanta?
Well, I think the first thing is to revitalize some of the bills that were vetoed by our governor. I think that many of us are on track, even the senator, with bringing back the campus carry bill and the religious freedom bill. I think those need to be brought back and addressed. There are other issues that actually the senator had talked about and hasn't done yet, and that is we talk about education. One of the goals would be to introduce, a constitutional change, if it took that, to have the State Board of Education members elected by their own districts. As it is now, they are appointed by the governor, and they don't necessarily represent the attitudes and the needs of the local district. So that would be one bill that I think we could all agree on would be good to do. There's another bill that's been passed by the Senate to create a 5.4% flat tax, income tax in Georgia. Now, the issue there is that it doesn't do much good for the low-income people, but it does a lot of good for the higher-income people. And the question then is the $200 million price tag that it would cost the state, is that worth it to attract corporations to move into the state by offering a lower income tax? So I believe that that's another one that needs to be examined a little more carefully and ask our citizens and our constituents if that would be something that they would feel would be the right thing to do.
Well, I just to change gears before we close up, as I travel the district and go to many of the functions, it just reiterates to me, we live in a great place and there's a lot of good people. I meet a lot of good people. What say you?
I shouldn't chuckle. Brian, I've met so many nice people, so many good people. They're grassroots people. They're workers. There's people that are running restaurants, running used car lots, running rental agencies, and just working hard, regular jobs. And they really are trying hard, and they are very serious and great people to talk to.
Yes, great people in the district, and I understand. I understand. It's just, too bad the rest of the country doesn't have it, but it's ours, and we're going to keep it, right? So,
we're just trying to do, Brian. We're trying to make things better for our children and our grandchildren. However, we can do that. Okay, and that's the underlying factor. I think of many of us that are running for office, even the incumbents. I think we all are looking down the road. We all have a little bit different approach to it. I'd like to see less debt in the state. Myself, for the future of our children and our ability to do things. So, but I think we all have that in mind. A better Georgia.
Well, before we close, you have crisscrossed the district, and today is the last day of campaigning, and you probably have a busy day seeing your schedule. But what final words would you like to share with the voters out there to see if you can earn their vote?
Well, first of all, before we hang up, I want to thank all of those who already have voted for me and those who have worked tirelessly putting up signs, making calls, and otherwise supporting my campaign. There's been a lot of them, and I wanted to just thank them publicly first. And second, I think that my candidacy is one of choice, of transparency, and one that will continue to represent the interests. I have been involved in many of the county meetings, county commissions, Board of Education meetings, and will continue to do so I will have an understanding of what our priorities are. So that's the choice that you have, and I will be a strong voice. I will be a leader. I will be a fighter. I believe that we need to push back. We need to push back against some of the issues that are facing us up here in North Georgia, and I will do that. So that's my goal, and my name is John Williamson. I am a candidate for the Georgia Senate, and I am a choice to give you a fighting voice, and I do ask for your vote tomorrow.
Tomorrow, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. Tomorrow you will not get up and ask your campaign manager what's on the campaign schedule for the day, right?
No, she will tell me I need to go out and wave some signs.
That's right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, sign waving tomorrow, but Wednesday. Okay. So, well, thank you very much, Mr. Williamson. As we tell all the candidates, we thank you so much for your willingness to serve, and we wish you well tomorrow in the election.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you for your coverage.
You're welcome. That's John Williamson, a candidate for 51st District State Senate candidates. So that wraps that up with Senator Steve Gooch, the incumbent, and John Williamson, the opponent. We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we will move into the 7th District State Representative race between Sam Snyder and David Rosser. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back after these messages. Lonnie, take us to break.